We have an opportunity in coming together here to get an update on some of our policy work, but also think together as we prepare for 2025 on some strategic next steps in our advocacy, particularly around the Covenant Homeownership Account, follow-up bill work that we have underway. And then we have the EDI work that is also ongoing, and you'll get updates on that as we go through this meeting. But before we begin, I do want to acknowledge that we are gathered in the ancestral land of the Coast Salish peoples, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. And we do this acknowledgement as an essential first step, but we must also engage the communities that have been impacted and engage in accountable relationships and take informed action to support those communities. And that's truly been the work that we are doing here. I also want to acknowledge, for those of you who have seen, that there has been a lawsuit on the Covenant Homeownership Account program. There is guidance by the department, by the Finance Commission, on what that means at this point. It does not stop the program at this particular point. There has not been a legal injunction of any sort or a court decision. So the program continues as it's been operating. So there's encouragement on the folks who are doing the outreach to really double down in supporting folks in accessing the ownership path. It's important, however, as we talk about the lawsuit, to realize that it's only a complaint on one aspect of the program, which is the racial aspect of the program. And the legislation, as Representative Taylor can speak in color with you, was drafted in such a way that the program can continue, even with that aspect being under attack. So highlighting that for all of you to be mindful as we think about what this means. We will not be spending a lot of time talking about the lawsuit. I just brought it up because it is in front of all of you. It's top of mind, but just know that it means the program continues as it stands right now until there's any significant court decision. What that reminds me of is the purpose of the work we're doing together on the Black Home Initiative. We have a primary goal of increasing homeownership opportunities for folks, particularly Black households. And we are working towards the ultimate goal of ensuring that we're reducing racial inequity and we're increasing the opportunity for folks to, and we cannot do that work individually. We've been more
Patience, I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm not sure if others are also
like
having that.
Connection is not as strong.
Am I the only one that can't hear anything?
No, Linda, I think Patience's Wi-Fi cut out on her. I imagine she's in the process of rejoining though.
Thanks.
No problem.
All right. Hello.
Hello, Patience. Welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry about that, folks. With that interruption, I'll try and stay off video until my connection is back up here. But let's move on to quick introductions of folks in the room. I think we have a solid number to quickly go through introductions, and then we can dive into the agenda, hearing from Representative Taylor, getting a presentation on the comp plan from Jesse, as well as hearing an update from Yasmin on the King County Equitable Development work. So if someone could kick us off in introductions, I will introduce myself and then tag the next person. You can do the same. It's just your name and organization. And then you tag the next person. I'm Patience Malaba, know all of you. Here at HDC, my pronouns are she, her, and I will tag Ryan.
Hello, my name is Ryan Donahue. I'm the Chief Advocacy Officer over at Habitat for Humanity, Seattle King and Kittitas counties, he, him pronouns. I'll go ahead and throw it over to Tolly.
Hi everyone, Tally Hairston. I'm the new Executive Director for Nehemiah Initiative. My pronouns are he, his, and I will pass it to Yasmin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yasmin Perez. I'm the Equitable Development Program Manager at King County in our Department of Community and Human Services. And I use she, her, and he, him pronouns. You can alternate and use both for me. Thanks so much. And I'll pass it to Danny.
Thanks, Yasmin. My name is Danny Turk. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Membership Programs and Equity Manager for HDC. And I'll tag Mark.
Mark Cody, Executive Director of Parkview Services. I use he, him pronouns. And I'll kick it over to Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Hosfeld, CEO and Executive Director at Homestead Community Land Trust, serving in primarily King, but also a little bit in Pierce County. And I will kick it over to Dorsal.
Hello, my name is Dorsal Plants. I use he, his pronouns, and I'm the excuse me, I'm the program coordinator for SKIP, and I will pass it to James. Have you gone yet?
Hi, Jim Gregory, he, him, professor of history at University of Washington and director of the Racial Restrictive Covenants Project at UW. And Joy.
Hi, I'm Joy Hunt with the City of Seattle Office of Housing. I'm also the co-chair of the BHI Sustaining Existing Homeowners Project team, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'll pass it to Emily.
Thanks, Joy. I'm Emily. I'm a grants administrator over in the Housing Homeownership Division at the State Housing Finance Commission. I'm also on the Sustaining Existing Homeownership Project team with Joy. We're a fun bunch over there. So really looking forward to this meeting. It's great to see everybody. And I'll pass it over to Loretta.
Good afternoon. Happy Friday, day after Halloween. Everybody made it through the sugar rush. So I'm Loretta Kale. I am the Director of Homeownership with Parkview Services, and I'm a she and a her. Oh. And we're switching screens. I lost everyone. My boxes went away. I can only see 4 people. I don't know who hasn't gone.
I'm Linda Taylor, the VP of Housing and Financial Empowerment at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. The Urban League is 94 years old today. I will pass it to Representative Jamila Taylor.
Hi, Representative Jamila Taylor. I'll be on your agenda, so I cannot see anyone else on the chat since there's a screen share. So if anyone wants to pop in, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Bittis, Washington Homeownership Resource Center, she, her, and let's see if I can think of anyone who's gone. Oh, Melissa Johnson.
Good afternoon. I am new to this group, representing the Washington Homeownership Resource Center and Parkview Services.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Hayward, Policy Specialist with the Seattle Metro Chamber. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm not sure who hasn't gone yet. Maybe Arthur?
Yeah, hello, Arthur Collin. I'm in the College of Built Environment at the University of Washington. He, him pronoun. Thank you. And I'm not sure.
Good afternoon. I'm Judy Loveless Morris. I serve as the Chief Diversity and People Officer at Salao Credit Union, she, her, hers, and I will let someone else pop in.
Patrice Thomas with the City of Seattle Office of Planning and Community Development, EDI Division. Happy to be here with you all, she, her, hers. I'll pass it on.
Amanda Sahali, City of Seattle, Office of Homeownership. I'm on the BHI Sustaining Existing Homeowners team, she, her.
Mary Connolly with the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners in Pierce County, and she, her pronouns.
Jesse Simpson, he, him, with the Housing Development Consortium.
Robert Belstein, Cedar River Group, he, him, work on a number of different housing related issues. Happy to be here.
Reese Pearson, Homestead Community Land Trust, he, him, they, them, pronouns.
I'm Krista Lenson. I work at the City of Olympia. I'm in the housing program there, and I'm glad to be here and to meet so many of you. I'm fairly new to this group. Thanks.
I'm George Frost, GW Frost and Associates. I'm a
My name's
consultant.
Ethan Robinson. I'm one of the advocacy and policy.
Excuse me. So mostly equity and social justice services.
Laura Frankie, HDC, she, her.
All right. Anyone who didn't get a chance to introduce themselves?
Hey there, my name is Erica Smith Erickson, she, her. I actually work at the City of Tumwater. I am a housing and land use planner, and we are located down in Thurston County. This is my first meeting, so thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Kathleen Coman. I'm the Marketing Program Manager for the Homeownership Division at the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Kat. With that, I will apologize proactively to anyone we might not include in this introduction and move us along with the agenda. But as Kat was introducing herself, I'm reminded to just elevate the significant progress that's being made on the Covenant Homeownership Account Program. We have over 80 folks who have closed on their homes, first-time homeownership opportunities that otherwise would not have been possible without your incredible work. But I just pause and acknowledge that impact every now and then because it can be easy to lose sight of that as we do this work. And that's a great segue to our next speaker, who I just have an incredible honor to introduce, Representative Jamila Taylor. She is a champion, she is a leader, and she's a partner in systems change work. She represents the 30th Legislative District. So for those of you in the district, it is time to vote. We only have a few days, so quick plug, unpaid commercial on that front. Let's get our champions re-elected. But I will also like to say about Representative Taylor that when we talk about the Covenant Homeownership Account Bill and the program being this groundbreaking legislation that introduces a new approach across the nation, we don't spend enough time acknowledging the leaders who did this work. And Representative Taylor is our prime sponsor. She is our champion. She has taken a lot of hate in some cases for this work, but she's been a fearless leader who's taken us to the finish line. And she'll be speaking with you about our vision for 2025. You will recall that the study that established the program did acknowledge some critical opportunities, including expanding the AMI to have more folks get access to ownership, and she'll cover that in a more in-depth way. We also have a budget proviso that we worked on this year that secured resources, $2 million for pre-development funding as well as outreach, alongside developing a plan of how we scale starter home production. We're going back in 2025 for another budget proviso that we've been in coordination with Representative Taylor on. So with that, I will hand over to the legend in Representative Taylor.
Well, thank you, Patience. I come to you from the parking lot at Virginia Mason Hospital. So life keeps lifing as I am trying to zoom in and give you this quick little update. I would normally give you more details, and I hope to give you more details in the future. It's just, I'm here. So as Patience alluded to, we have a trailer bill, and a trailer bill generally is like minor fixes or minor updates and pivots as it relates to legislation. And it's not intended to be a wholesale change of what we're doing. We want to see this program fully implemented. Yes, we have more than 80 folks who have been able to purchase their first home. Age ranges from 23 to 80. I've received outreach from folks who said, oh my gosh, I was one of those recipients, including legendary Delbert Richardson, who is our a Black historian that goes around with the artifacts of the history of enslavement in the United States. And it's incredible to know, like, wait, I couldn't have imagined that he would have needed this program, but he's part of history making, and he has been someone who has really shared an incredible, tangible history with community. And he's definitely allowed me to share this with anybody and everybody. So thank you all for your work out there in the community. And if anyone approaches you about wanting to talk about the program publicly, please encourage them to do so or reach out to us. It's very important for people to see that this is a program that's impacting real people's lives and that we are making meaningful change. So for the trailer bill, we have recognized that the AMI being at 100% is complicated, especially for families in King County and places where AMI is, well, the cost of purchasing a home is really high, but also complicated in rural areas where the available homes for someone within the AMI range that we're working in it's not there. The supply is just not there. And so our suggestion is to increase it to 140%. We are researching to ensure that that meets the constitutional muster for quote unquote gift of public goods, and whether or not that whether we will have to make a pivot a little bit lower. 120% has absolutely been used, and that's more than where we are with 100%. So any movement between 100% and 140% is what I think will be success in this particular endeavor. But when we get to 140%, a person will need fewer resources and will have better access for sustainability of their home in Washington State. We also need to make some pivots on the oversight committee to make sure that we have a fully appointed committee. Some definitions are a little bit too narrow, and we want to expand it, and also make sure that we're reaching all corners of community that are impacted by this particular legislation in providing oversight. We're also concerned about folks who have been impacted by subjected to racially restrictive covenants, but they were able to purchase their home, but they aren't able to fully utilize their property and with the equity that they may have gained without selling the home. So we want to expand the opportunity there with a focus on allowing for increased housing supply by allowing a legacy homeowner, we'll just call them that for the purpose of this conversation, legacy homeowner, to add an ADU on the property. And that would allow for rental property expansion or multi-generational homes where family members can come home. Is, rent's too darn high. So some of these students are coming home sooner than we expect. So these are great opportunities to help families really yield the benefit of equity and expansion of the services there. I was in the housing committee's work session just a couple of weeks ago and heard some really good presentations from Homestead Community Land Trust and some other folks on alternative ownership types. And we want to make sure that the participants in this program have access to all home ownership types that are available. That could be limited co-op, limited equity co-op programs, homestead community land trust opportunities, and then if we get legislation passed that would convert manufactured homes to from personal property to real property, making sure that that is also an eligible type should a family want to go in that direction. And then most importantly, for those who've already been able to participate in the program, the 80+ people, we've always contemplated adding loan forgiveness. And so the question is the timeline. Would it be a one-time loan forgiveness after a certain amount of time, or would it be gradual over time? So if a person lives in the house 5 years, 10 years, what would that look like? If the person, sells in 2 years, that has a higher taxable moment, but would they still get the loan forgiveness, or what would that really look like? And so we're looking at formulas for providing that as an opportunity there. We are paying attention to the lawsuits that are coming our way. We don't anticipate that that we'll be able to, we'll have to stop our work here, but we do need to pay attention to the political landscape as we are making these minor tweaks to the program. At the end of the day, we're doing good work out here, and we're going to continue to do good work. On the other side of the legislative advocacy is a budget proviso process. And outside of the resources that are in the funding for the Covenant Homeownership Act through that $100 document reporting fee, we have asked for resources that are more indirect as a benefit to potential home buyers and existing home buyers. And part of that was to ensure that we are doing the proper outreach in community. While we have anticipated that we'd only need it in the first biennium, we still need to do more outreach, more and more outreach on that level. Ensuring families have access to counseling services is really critical. And then, of course, pre-development support so that we can all work on our efforts to increase the supply. And I'll let Patience describe that pre-development support in more detail for you in a future meeting. So this endeavor is something that we just can't fail at. But we also have to deal with the realities of budget. As you can imagine, in the Covenant Homeownership Act, we are dependent on the doc recording fees. So we can only give out the number of loans and down payment assistance based on the available funds. So if we have a banner year of $200 million, we can give out $200 million. If we only have $50 million, we can give out $50 million. We haven't exceeded either one of those quite yet. We will get to that point. The other challenge is making sure that we are very focused, laser focused on making sure that we get resources to the end user and not let this turn into a bucket that is eroding from the direct beneficiaries. That is something that has been near and dear to my heart. And while it would be great for us to be able to cover programming and underspend for other endeavors, that can pull us away from our mission and getting the new homeowners into the market. I believe at one point we were looking to get 500 new Black homeowners, and so if we're at 86 in the first 3 months of this, we're well on our way to get to that ultimate goal. And also recognizing that this is a benefit to communities in terms of stability. One last thing I want to remind everyone is that our budget, when we're talking about budget provisos, it comes out of our general fund. That money there is, we don't have a lot of information right now in terms of where our budget's going to be. We have a few initiatives that will impact by the order of billions. And so the budget writers and the negotiators will have to make very, very difficult decisions. So there might be a need for us to tap into the Covenant Homeownership Act to get some of that money that we have designated for home owners. So that is all to say, yes, we want to, be very protective of the money for the homeowners, but we might have to deal with the budgeting realities that if we cannot get external money for our budget proviso, that we may have to ask for the money inside of the Covenant Homeownership Act. So just know that, we want to be very, very limited and needing that kind of request moving forward. But we definitely have to face that reality with, the tight budget world that we are in writ large. With that, I can take some questions or other suggestions that we can take a look at.
Questions for Rep. Taylor on the sausage making of the state.
And there's a lot of sausage there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ruby.
I think you're on mute.
Hey,
okay.
Very, very good to see you, Representative Taylor. I just wanted to say that at some point, I hope you'd consider partnering with some Black homeowners, current Black homeowners, that would probably be interested in splitting their lot when that becomes available, and building an ADU that could probably contribute to the housing stock for other Black homeowner families. Some of us have nice sized yards and homes, and they're tearing down yards. They're making skinny homes with no land at all. And while we still have them, those are perfect for families with kids, and so, it's just a thought.
Oh yeah, that is on our radar, and that's one of the reasons why we're including ADUs as part of the trailer bill, so that you would have that option, and we'll look into, the lot splitting issue as it may impact homeownership types and things like that. So first and foremost, ADUs. For legacy homeowners, absolutely. If they've already split the lot and they want that ADU or that second unit that could be purchased by an independent person, that property likely is already eligible for first-time home buyer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Joy.
This is amazing. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. It's just an honor to be here and hear this work. An issue that keeps coming up in the sustaining existing homeowner space is the burden of property taxes, especially for legacy homeowner families in areas that were formerly redlined and now are valued much more highly. One example is the Central District in Seattle, but there's many, many other examples that we could point to. And there's a couple of policy solutions that we keep talking about that I just wanted to put before you and would love to keep kind of lifting up in all kinds of different spaces. Number one is that there is currently a tax exemption for seniors under 80% AMI, But
Mhm.
when grandma dies, when somebody passes away, that exemption doesn't pass on to legacy homeowner families, and maybe a young person is inheriting the house. They don't qualify for any kind of exemption, and they're carrying the full tax burden for the home at the current assessed value, which is in many cases increased very, very significantly over time. And we think that's a time when families are really vulnerable to housing loss, and maybe there's a chance to change the way the exemption works, to expand it to legacy homeowner families in some way. And then another issue is that been meeting with the King County assessor and look forward to meeting with the new Pierce County assessor very soon when they're elected. And we know that most people that are eligible for the existing senior exemption aren't getting it. So in King County, we think that there's 50,000 households that are eligible for the senior exemption that aren't getting it, and those families are very vulnerable to homeownership loss. So we would love to keep just kind of lifting up and dialoguing about these property tax related issues, knowing that there's a lot to do on taxes, and it's a revenue lean year, but these issues keep coming up, and so we want to lift them up every time we have an opportunity in spaces like this. So thank you for hearing it out.
Yes, I would really encourage you to reach out to Representative Berg, who's chair of finance. In terms of that, the tax policy around the legacy homeowners is something that can absolutely be considered and done outside of the Covenant Homeownership Act. And so I think that is the first way to see if that can become real, at least in part. The other issue, I'm hoping that our community partners like the Urban League that's on here are made aware of that, and as they're doing their outreach, our community partners are doing their outreach to families, because it's not just the potential new home buyers that are talking to us. It's some of the folks who are talking to their elders in their community. So it's a universe that I think we can continue to do the outreach. Just adding another, sheet that goes along with, here are some resources for existing legacy home buyers, homeowners, and their families and such. So I think we can look at that as something that's authorized as part of the outreach effort.
So helpful, thank you. And I just want to give a shout out to Linda Taylor. Urban League has been an amazing partner in doing that work, and we're super grateful for it.
Absolutely, she and I go way back.
way back.
Excellent. Well, great questions. And Representative Taylor, thank you for covering all of that overview for the work that's ahead in 2025. I will say that the bill drafting is underway. We're coordinating with Representative Taylor. We'll bring it back in front of you, likely at the summit in December. And then on the budget proviso, as she mentioned, the state has a significant budget gap. But we are going to be mobilizing strongly to get support. We started at 3 million last year. We ended up at 2, and we're going to need robust support to get it to the finish line even in 2025. And the constitutional masterpiece is on the bill. That engagement is already underway. Pacifica Law Group is looking into this work proactively, as well as the legal counsel staff at the state level. So more to come. Representative Taylor, closing words from you.
Thank you for all of your advocacy. There's a lot more work that needs to be done within the 7-point plan of the Black Home Initiative. And much of it is not going to have the same notoriety of this work, but it continues, and making sure that we are talking to and sending our advocates to the various committees where policies that are benefiting this effort and beyond. So, for example, I'm gathering folks on condo liability. It's a priority. It's one of those things that is on the initiative that expands home ownership. And so it's, for some folks, they're like, well, why would you go into that space? Because it benefits the ultimate goal of increasing the number of Black homeowners, and addresses the larger issue around the housing crisis that's in Washington State and beyond. I know that other states are looking at what we're doing and want to know how we can afford it, how we're implementing it. And just know that while we might be at the front of the line on all this work, the undoing the history of 400 years of oppression is not corrected in one bill alone. So there's just a lot of things that that seem tangential that we need to pay our attention to, and just know, no matter who gets elected president of the United States, that the negative impact by Trump being in office from 4 years ago, with all of the conservative justices and federal judges that are already on the bench right now, we have a fight ahead of us to support our Washingtonians. So, you know, we got to keep moving forward. No matter who gets in the presidency, we still have to deal with the impact of those appointments. So elections matter, and judicial branch matters. It's all connected. That's all connected. So I say that as a person who is an attorney in my other life. And so I just don't want us to lose sight of the gains that we're making here, that we still have to fight for on the judicial branch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rep. Taylor. We'll continue to give you your flowers and set more stages where we can do that more effectively. This work covers the demand side of the work. We've begun to make progress on the supply pipeline. There is a starter home plan that's being developed in partnership with the Black Home Initiative. We'll bring that in front of you in not too long here at a meeting. But it's important for us to keep all of those arms together. There's a supply side, there's a demand side for us to effectively address the home ownership needs that we have. We're going to pivot to that one side of the work here in Seattle, in particular on the Seattle Comprehensive Planning Zoning maps that were released most recently. This is alongside the Seattle Growth Strategy, and there is some significant improvement in what's been published recently, and Jesse on our team will provide some insights on what is in the plan, what are the opportunities for further change, and how do you plug in and engage in this once-in-a-generation opportunity that we have in Seattle to robustly plan for housing abundance, but within all of that, incorporating full rental housing production as well as ownership opportunities. So with that, Jesse, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Patience. Happy to be here. Jesse Simpson, him, Director of Government Relations and Policy at HDC, and I am also co-chair of the Complete Communities Coalition, which is the big tent organization that we pull together as HDC with FutureWise to work on the Seattle Comprehensive Plan update. Real quick primer on comprehensive plan updates for those who haven't heard me speak about this before. Comprehensive plans really set the North Star for growth and housing over the next 20 years. They create the entire framework for all zoning and direct city investments that are made. Since the 1990s, Seattle has used a urban village strategy, which has concentrated almost all of the growth inside a relatively limited set of areas in the city, in the urban centers and urban villages, colored in various shades of blue on this map at the right. While this has been successful in terms of creating some additional density in areas and has helped support adding more housing, it has at the aggregate level limited housing production and has really bifurcated the city in two in terms of preserving the single family areas and prohibiting growth from there and channeling everything into a small amount of the land. This comprehensive plan update is a real once in a decade chance to change this basic framework to allow more homes in areas throughout the entire city and to help scale up housing production overall. So I've been maybe mentioning the term zoning. Zoning is the set of rules that restrict what can be built and where. So uses like whether that's allowing for just residential, for commercial, for industrial uses, what kind of scale of building you're allowed to build new, what what density, and then all kinds of nitpicky kind of setback rules around how the building is allowed to fill out a lot. The comprehensive plan process is a long process and keeps getting longer. We started working on this around the scoping of the plan back in 2022. We've run through the engagement on the environmental impact statement scoping, release of a draft plan, and now we are we've just passed the release of actual draft zoning maps. So taking what had been maybe fuzzier concepts and turning them into an initial proposal for how to change the rules around what can be built where. This has kicked off a 2-month comment period that's going to stretch through December 20th. Going to need all your voices engaged, talking to planners, the mayor, council about the importance of increasing supply for affordable homeownership and ensuring the plan is as supportive of abundant housing as possible. After the comment period, that's for us now, the process will kick over to the council, where over the next 6 months plus, they will, over the first 6 months and beyond of next year, they will approve a final plan, implement zoning, and starting with the new zoning for neighborhood residential going beyond. We had a very active engagement process during the draft plan and submitted a comment letter, a high-level sign-on letter to the mayor's office containing a set of specific policies that we thought would meaningfully improve the draft plan. These were around expanding the feasibility of middle housing to allow people to build family-sized homes in fourplexes throughout the city, to expand transit-oriented development, both by looking at the full walkshed around frequent transit, not just restricting housing to the arterials themselves, as well as expanding the number of some proposed neighborhood centers to maximize their potential, allowing more homes in centers and expanding affordable housing density bonus. I think the mayor's office has been, the growth strategy that's presented before us is a meaningful improvement over what was originally put forward as a draft plan. I think that's reflecting a lot of the success of the advocacy to date. Though I will note they haven't met every one of our asks. While they've not met every one of our asks, they have made meaningful steps towards it and have, I think we should applaud those, as well as highlighting some potential opportunities to go further. So the updated growth strategy that has come out from the mayor's office has a set of a few changes to existing neighborhood residential areas. In this comprehensive plan, you've got expanded urban centers. So this is some of the existing urban villages and other centers that are throughout the city. You can see them in the hash marks on this map to the right. Notable ones are around Upper Queen Anne, Greenwood, Admiral District, and West Seattle Junction. In the Central District between Union and First Hill, and around the Othello light rail station. The logic for extending these centers is to capture a full walkshed around a central point, or the full walkshed around light rail station, whether existing or planned. 130. The updated growth strategy also has 30 new neighborhood anchors. These are the light blue dots scattered throughout the city. These are intended as a few block radius of around existing commercial and multifamily uses that sort of predate zoning codes. and looking at strategies to build around that existing, those existing uses to expand more walkable amenities throughout the city. It's kind of the 15-minute city approach. The updated growth strategy has 5 additional neighborhood centers relative to the original draft. These new ones are North Magnolia, High Point, Mid Beacon Hill, which is kind of just south of the golf course, Upper Fremont, and Hillman City. The plan has frequent transit arterials as well, allowing for 5-story apartments on the arterials themselves. And then finally, everywhere outside those areas is allowing for 4plexes, full implementation of HB 1110, the middle housing bill that was passed at the state level prior session. And then in some of the areas, they're allowing some incentives to go beyond that with an affordable housing density bonus and with a stacked flat incentive, both of which increase how much you're allowed to build around transit in the neighborhood residential areas that aren't proposed to go higher. So the neighborhood residential, I think this is one of the pieces where the mayor's office has been most responsive to feedback in this revised plan. The development standards have been updated to make it much more feasible to build family-sized homes in the middle housing, basically following the State Department of Commerce's model code. They've also added some incentives, as I mentioned earlier, and just to show kind of what scale of building we're talking about, it's generally like a 3-story building covering about half the lot, and with usually 4 homes per lot allowed. Bit bigger for stacked flats, which are an attempt to respond to the critiques of townhomes and allow for, instead of everyone has their own stairs, you've got one set of stairs in the building, and it can be more accessible to people of all sorts. And then the affordable housing density bonus allows you to go up another story and increase capacity. I included this table. I'm not going to go through this now, but we'll send the slides out. This is breaking down the exact how all of the calibrations change, but feel free to use this later when you're referring to it. One big thing I want to highlight, one area for improvement, is the stacked flat incentive is limited to lots that are greater than 6,000 square feet. So on the map, gray is neighborhood residential parcels that are not near frequent transit. Yellow is the ones that are near frequent transit and are big enough to allow for the stacked flat incentive. Red is the ones that would be excluded by the 6,000 square foot limit of requirement. And I think it's got a real disparate impact here in terms of where this rule would allow for new stacked flats to be built. You'd restrict it from some of the highest opportunity and lowest displacement risk neighborhoods in North Seattle, while allowing it beyond 85th and in otherwise kind of random pockets. Beyond the middle housing, I can drop a link to the full zoning map in the chat. It's pretty hard to see when it's just on the slide at a whole scale, but in general, this is showing a bit of a snapshot of Northeast Seattle that I think shows some of the main dynamics. So you've got these neighborhood centers, a few blocks around a central point, allowing for some scale of multifamily and mixed use housing. You have transit arterials, so running These are the magenta lines, and allowing for either mixed use or multifamily, basically 5-story apartments on the parcels directly fronting them. And then it steps down immediately to the neighborhood residential. Our overall message is that the mayor's office and OPCD are responding to feedback, taking a step back and looking at this current proposed comp plan compared to every comprehensive plan before. I think it is the biggest change in direction for the city, reflective of a growing groundswell of support for the idea that we need more housing in the city to address our deep affordability challenges and to repair the harms of past segregation and build a more abundant housing for a more inclusive society. This meaningful improvement still leaves a lot of room for improvement. Even though there is meaningful improvement, there's still a lot of room for further improvement within this plan. I think the middle housing component is a definite positive step. Still some tweaks around the stacked flats. The additional neighborhood centers, we are happy to see some, but they also have not responded by adding the specific ones we'd called out that are in some high opportunity, low displacement risk areas. And then the transit arterials are, by limiting development to just the parcels fronting it, it's really forcing renters to live on the noisy and polluted arterials themselves, and isn't maximizing the opportunity for either growth, and it's creating some real environmental justice impacts. We're still kind of in early phases of figuring out a formal response from HCC and the Complete Communities Coalition. Here are some of the areas we're focusing on. We'll be sending messaging around next week, the further adapted version and document to help people engage with the planners and mayor's office. In general, our recommendations are following the same kind of format of our prior letter, looking for continued increase in the feasibility of middle housing, family-sized homes, particularly removing the lot size minimum for the stacked flat incentive, expanding transit-oriented development by allowing for multifamily homes to go beyond the arterials themselves, thinking about what areas are a easy 5-minute walk from a bus stop, but are on quiet streets. And then on the arterials themselves, allowing for mixed uses with commercial uses on the ground floor. Expanding the affordable housing density bonus everywhere in the city. I think it will still be challenging to make these developments happen. And so why put additional restrictions geographically? We know we need more housing. Is somebody really going to object to an affordable development at a relatively small scale, 4 stories area? And then around expanding neighborhood centers to expand the size of the proposed centers, going out another block or two, and then adding new ones, specifically calling out Alki, Seward Park, Gasworks, North Broadway, and Sunset Hill around Golden Gardens, all of which have been studied in prior versions of this plan and would give people the opportunity to live near some of Seattle's most beloved parks and open spaces, and open up that opportunity beyond those able to afford a single family home. Want to really underscore the critical importance of continued engagement, making your voice heard. The city is running these info sessions, one in every district, 5:30 to 7:30. We already had the first one, which was on Wednesday in the Nordic Museum in Ballard, but the list of the upcoming ones is here. So kicking off next Wednesday, Madison, and then Thursday at Washington Hall, and then beyond. Strongly encourage people to show up to one of these at least. I think if anybody attended the open houses for the draft plan, it will be similar, kind of a bunch of boards up explaining the plan, planners around, roving representatives from the mayor's office engaged in conversation. Encourage you to show up, submit written comments, try to connect with people, and to really explain in personal terms about why housing affordability matters to you, and engage in dialogue that way. There's also really important to submit those written comments to, I think we know that we haven't yet seen big NIMBY organizing against this plan, but I think as we get further and further into concrete proposals on how zoning and land use may change, we know that's a risk. And so I think it's really critical that people get engaged and make their comments heard. With that, we've got some time for questions. Happy to chat further. I will definitely send the slide deck around to this group. Ruby.
Go ahead, Ruby. You muted yourself.
Thanks for that summation, Jesse. That was great. I just want to add that the city of Seattle offers office hours that you'll find particular office hours. If you want to take a deep dive into these issues, you could ask your own issues about your home, your neighborhood, and at this office hours, it goes from 11 to 2, generally 3 hours. And there'll be a lot of people asking a lot of questions, and they try to answer everybody's questions. It's just very, very informative in terms of not even your question, but just listening to everybody else's question and hearing their answers. It's really, really helpful. So I would encourage anybody that is really more interested in going a little bit deeper into this to take advantage of the office hours. And you'll find that on the hub, on the City of Seattle website, with everything else, with where we engage and stuff. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ruby. Glad you highlighted it. I just dropped a link to those where you can register, and then the overview of what times they are in the chat. Any other questions, additional clarification? Lily, not to put you too much on the spot, but was wondering, so Lily is one of our co-chairs for the Complete Communities Coalition, so representative from the chamber. I was wondering, Lily, if you could speak a little about how the chamber has engaged on this and sees the importance of the plan.
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity, Jesse. So I think, as most folks know, housing, both affordable and market rate housing, and increasing the supply of both of those types of housing has been a priority of the business community for quite some time. We were a big part of the conversations around House Bill 1110 back in 2023 with a lot of you, and we really value the partnerships that we have there. You know, I kind of sit on this committee, I always say, in kind of like two hats. One of those hats, I think of the market rate developers that make up a lot of the chamber's membership. We also have some pretty fantastic affordable housing developers like Habitat for Humanity who are part of our membership, and then also representing the employer community. And you know, everyone from our smallest businesses up to the really, really big guys that we all know really prioritize excuse me, affordable housing and market rate housing. You know, they see it as the item that is going to help them attract talent to this state and retain folks here and have folks live close to where they work. And so we are very much invested in this coalition and really leaning into the comprehensive plan. And I want to say too, I know Jesse already mentioned this, but we were really pleased to see the response from the mayor's office on some of the feedback that we submitted back in May. And we think it's a real testament to the fact that they are also prioritizing the rezoning of our city and the capacity building. And they are also being really responsive to community feedback. So we're really excited for this next phase of engagement. We're going to be continuing to talk to the mayor's office and then also speaking to council members as well, which we have done a little bit so far, and we've gotten really great feedback from them. And think that most of them will be allies of ours moving forward. So I think, Jesse, did that kind of cover what
Yeah,
you wanted me to there?
that
Okay,
was
appreciate the opportunity and thank you all.
Excellent. Well, Jesse, thank you for that great overview on the comp plan. And it's clear that we have 2 months, a 2 months window of engagement with the city before this plan goes to council. And you were very specific about what we're asking for. If you could speak a little bit more in color on the stacked flat tweak that we are requesting right around the minimum lot size, just so folks are going in understanding what's the current minimum lot size that's been proposed and what are we asking for it to be increased to. There's also a lot of great things about the stacked flat bonus that's being included. I mean, it's up to 6 units that can be built. Just highlighting for folks so they have those tools ready and handy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll pull up the zoning table. So the stacked flat incentive allows for additional development capacity through this thing called the floor area ratio. That's a 0.2 FAR bump, which is pretty meaningful, allows for additional development, and that's an attempt to try and offset some of the barriers around condo construction. It would allow for also additional density within that same lot. It would be 9 homes on a 6,000 square foot lot. The current proposal allows for it to be a quarter mile from frequent transit, but only if the lot is bigger than 6,000 square feet. Much of Seattle was laid out, especially the older parts of Seattle were laid out smaller than 6,000 square foot lots. 5,000 is probably the most common single lot size, and many of them are more in the 4,400, 4,500. I think there's a pretty strong logic for just removing this limitation entirely. The nature of how you would calculate the floor area ratio bonus means that it already allows for only a small, it limits the size of the house based on the size of the lot. At a minimum, bringing that lot size minimum down to 5,000 or 4,000 square feet would accomplish a lot in terms of opening up all of the places in red here on the map to this additional housing to stacked flats. Does that cover it? Any questions there?
I think that covers it. Any questions for Jesse? All right, hearing none, I'll also underscore on the neighborhood centers, right? It's a bump from the 24 that we had in the initial draft to the relatively 30 that we have now, and asking for more. There is room for expanding that. We know there was an initial plan that had 50 neighborhood center options that we could be getting up to. So anything we can do on the coalition front to really guide folks, will be providing talking points, and let's work together and passing the most boldest comprehensive plan that we can move forward. With that, Jesse, any last words here?
No, I just think that this process is gonna continue stretching on. It may sometimes feel like, didn't I hear about this 5 months ago? Why do you need me to weigh in again? You know, it's an extended process, and yes, we do need you to weigh in when we ask for people to weigh in. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and it's really important that people keep engaged, make their voices heard, because what feedback in one phase of the plan doesn't mean that we're done and get everything. And what we see is that we're getting incremental improvements on what's proposed, and we need to keep up the momentum. And thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Jesse. Great work. Well, we'll move on from the comprehensive plan discussion, and I hope that folks will follow up offline with Jesse and the Complete Communities Coalition to continue to move this work forward. Next up, we have Yasmin Perez with the King County DCHS. I am really excited to see Yasmin after a little bit of a while in this work, but we're really looking forward to get an update on the King County Equitable Development Program work. Where are we? What are some new opportunities for partnership? And what does that look like? So Yasmin, over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Patience. And yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me to share an update on this work. As I said earlier, my name is Yasmin Perez. I use she, her, and he, him pronouns, and I'm the Equitable Development Program Manager in the Housing and Community Development Division at King County. And I work on various efforts to support anti-displacement strategies and investments, particularly in community-driven development. So I'm excited to share with you about the new King County Equitable Development Initiative. I know many folks here are very familiar with the City of Seattle's Equitable Development Initiative. So Bambi asked me to focus a little bit on some background to the countywide initiative and what is coming up in the first year of implementation. And happy to answer questions, and hopefully we'll have some time for discussion. I'll try to be speedy in my presentation so we have time for that. And are you all seeing my slides okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Excellent. Okay, so a little bit of background. This sort of inspired by the City of Seattle's EDI program, a coalition of community-based organizations called the King County EDI Coalition, formed in 2020. So this work has been a multi-year process. The coalition successfully worked with the King County Council to pass a motion in 2022 requesting that the executive establish a countywide equitable development initiative modeled in part by the City of Seattle's program, and to produce an implementation plan in 2 phases that was developed collaboratively with a community planning work group. That process of implementation planning took 2.5 years. So just recently was completed in August the second phase of the implementation plan. Both phases are over 100 pages, and there's many detailed recommendations within the implementation plan, particularly guidance from the community planning work group on sort of recommended stages of implementation, how this program should collaborate with the Best Starts for Kids capital grant program, how to prioritize unincorporated areas of King County with these new investments. There's also a whole section on displacement risk indicator data and metrics, and a report that our department developed with the community planning work group on individual displacement risk indicators. That's in the appendix of the phase 2 report. And there's many other sections, including recommendations on potential funding options, roles and duties of the EDI advisory board, and more. So I won't be able to go over all of those recommendations in my presentation, but I do recommend looking through the report and reading the executive summary at least. And I forgot to copy those links to have them on hand, but when we get into discussion, I can pull up those links and drop them in the chat for you. So this the motion to develop the implementation plan didn't have dedicated funding identified for an EDI. So part of the implementation planning process was to look at potential funding options. But in 2024, in the 2024 budget, there was a budget proviso included for $1 million from our short-term lodging tax revenue to support EDI implementation. So currently that is the only funding allocation we have for this work at this time. And the motion to accept the implementation plan passed the council in early October. So we are now in the early steps of implementation work. So this is the community planning work group. We refer to them as the CPW for short. So apologies if I slip into that acronym. There was 15 members, community leaders from across the county working on equitable development and economic development, affordable housing, and other related issues, as well as folks who are part of community-based organizations that represent low-income communities, communities of color, and immigrant and refugee communities in areas that are experiencing high risk of displacement. This group of dedicated leaders put really significant time and energy into this process. They had meetings 2 to 4 times a month for 2.5 years. So it was a very committed group of leaders, and in total, I think we had over 50 virtual meetings, 4 in-person day-long working retreats, and a number of additional ad hoc meetings to review many drafts and discuss feedback. So a lot of this work, the community planning work group really gets the credit for a lot of the hard work on this. So I think you all are very familiar with equitable development approaches, but the primary strategy of a King County EDI is to provide capacity building and capital investments for community-driven and community-owned capital projects, particularly ones that increase housing and community stability and expand access to opportunities and community wealth building in communities at risk of displacement. Because community-driven projects are led by and for communities impacted by displacement and disinvestment, they're generally initiated and led by community-based organizations rather than traditional developers. So the focus of a King County EDI would really be to provide early investment to community-based organizations so they can successfully undertake the development process. In that way, a King County EDI would create a pathway for small CBOs to move from being shovel hungry to shovel ready. Shovel hungry is a term you may be more familiar with than other audiences that I talk to sometimes. This is a term coined by Uba Gardiri, the former director of the Seattle EDI program, to describe CBOs that have a project vision, but really need significant capacity building and support to start a capital project. So investments in the earlier stages of a capital project can help community-based organizations build their organizational capacity, develop a project, engage in pre-development activities, and acquire sites to be more competitive to apply for other capital funding opportunities, such as our King County's Housing Finance Program and the Washington State Housing Trust Fund. Eventually, a fully funded King County EDI, the vision for that is that a King County EDI would also provide construction capital funding for projects that have reached the shovel-ready stage. So it's one thing that came out of this process is that our community planning work group really envisions the King County EDI being more than a sort of new funding program that's kind of doing things differently, kind of over in the one corner of the county's work, but really being a kind of new priority for the county and something that transforms how all county departments invest in communities affected by displacement and legacies of discriminatory housing policies and disinvestment, and that the Equitable Development Initiative is creating sort of the principles and framework that can help sort of align capital investments across the county. So in the report, there's also sort of an analysis of the community planning work group's recommendations. Funding is sort of obviously the biggest challenge to implementation in this process thus far, even though it's been multiple years. Only $1 million has been allocated for EDI implementation. The community planning work group identified that approximately 10 million per year would be needed just to implement the kind of early stage implementation of a King County EDI. And to fully implement a King County EDI in its full scope and vision, the CPW identified that at least 100 million in dedicated annual funding would be needed to really meaningfully undo the effects of centuries of inequitable public and private investment in King County. So the implementation plan examines potential funding options, but the sort of summary analysis is that we did not find any current fund source that is undesignated or could be rededicated to generate the scale of resources the CPW envisions. And ultimately, implementing the kind of full-scale vision of a King County EDI will require that the state legislature give King County additional revenue authority or directly allocate sufficient state revenue for equitable development. So where we are now is that while there are implementation recommendations in the report that go kind of beyond what is achievable with the $1 million that has been allocated for EDI implementation, our implementation plan over the next year is really focused just on what can be achieved with the $1 million, since there is no additional fund source at this time. The implementation timeline, so over the next 18 months, we are launching this new initiative. The funds from the 1 million proviso will be used to establish an interim EDI advisory board. That advisory board will work very closely. Part of the core principle of equitable development is to have strong community leadership and accountability to communities most directly impacted. So in how we design and deploy these new investments has to be done differently than a lot of our traditional capital funding, where community members are much more involved in sort of co-governing how these funds are deployed. So the EDI advisory board will play a significant role in helping develop the 1-year capacity building grants that will then also be deployed to smaller CBOs who are working on housing related capital projects. So the vast majority of the funds will go to community-based organizations in the form of grants. Some of the funds will be used for staffing costs as well, to hire staff to manage this new capacity building work. And the timeline, so again, we only have $1 million and sort of an 18-month timeline. This is a somewhat loose timeline. There's some flexibility built in to ensure that the interim advisory board co-designs and co-develops the capacity building grant RFP. So where we're at now is in the process of beginning to hire, and we'll be hiring and onboarding staff over the next few months, and then beginning to recruit and onboard the interim advisory board. We will likely be going through several months of development of the RFP, and probably the earliest the RFP will be released is July of next year, but it will depend on sort of how the collaborative process goes with the interim advisory board. I think that's where I'll stop now. It's a lot of information, but happy to answer questions and or discuss any kind of aspects of the planning process that might be of interest.
Thank you, Yasmin, for that great overview. We'll open it up for questions. And while I don't see one yet, I will put forward a question for you. It's great to see this progress. This has been long time coming. So my question is on the capacity grants within the $1 million number. What are those? Are those helping the shovel folks move to shovel ready? Are they going direct us being stood up? Is that committee going to help identify the revenue source to support the work? I hope you got.
Yeah, I had trouble hearing your full question, Patience. So let me know if I got this right. It sounds like you wanted to know generally how much the grant might be, and then whether or not the interim advisory board would also continue to be working on this revenue question of a new revenue
Precisely.
source.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so right now the recommendation from the community planning work group was that the grants should be between $100,000 and $150,000 per organization. There's not a lot of resources, so I think that was, in the context of wanting to have be able to support at a level that felt, it would make an impact, but could support multiple projects. And these are capacity building grants, so we know that there's going to be a need for significantly more resources as these projects progress. The revenue question for sure is something that I think all the community planning work group members and the future interim advisory board will be actively involved in. And certainly the coalition as well continues to work on that issue. And yeah, we will continue to see sort of what happens through their advocacy work as well. And we don't know what will happen with future revenue, but we do know that there's a need for significant new revenue that is dedicated to equitable development, really to make the level and scale of investments that are needed, that our current fund source landscape just isn't really adequate for that.
Great. Well, thank you, Yasmin, and thank you again for the presentation. We are right at the 4-minute mark, so I'm cognizant of time. And I don't think we'll get the opportunity for folks to announce what might be happening on your end. Please send any key updates to Bambi, and we'll be getting those out through the BHI Policy Network alert. But I want to thank our speakers for your great job providing an overview. I want to thank Bambi for all of her incredible work pulling us all together here, even though she's in absentia. But I also want to thank each of you for your engagement. Fragmented systems that we operate in, and we are making incredible progress each day with all of your contributions. And we look forward to pressing on as we get ready to get into 2025 and make an even bigger impact. So let's keep moving forward and have a great weekend. We might see some of you on Saturday at the Frank Chop celebration, who also was really instrumental in leading the work on the Covenant Homeownership account. So thank you, everyone.